Lamar disputed and refuted a report made in-game on Sunday by Tracy Wolfson, sideline reporter for CBS, that sounded like this during an in-game interaction.
Frustration brewing on the Ravens sideline after that interception. Lamar threw his helmet. He then had a talk with right guard Daniel Faalele, who said they know it's coming every time. And then Zay Flowers came over as well, added to the discussion. It's just all hands on deck to try to get this offense going, guys.
Yeah, look, we get snippets. We can see and only report what we hear, right? Certain things. We can't report everything. That is not, our role. It was just communication, right? Just conversation between Lamar and look, Lamar rarely gets up and talk. It was Faalele that came over to him. Lamar rarely gets up and interacts, and a lot of the quarterbacks do that, by the way. They sit by themselves, they do their thing. And then there's other quarterbacks, who get up and go over and talk to their line and their wide receivers and running backs and are really involved. It's just the personalities of the quarterbacks. But Faalele felt like he had to come over and explain what was happening, felt like they saw something. And so, yes, I think it was misconstrued, that report, and I apologize if it came off that way. But it was just more along the lines of they're trying to figure something out here, right? They know something is off. And how can they fix it before it gets worse? And that was early in the game. I do still think there is some disconnect, I don't really know. Like I said, it's one game, but there's definitely something off with the offense. And it could just be, Lamar not feeling like Lamar.
That was courtesy of Glenn Clark radio program earlier this week, and Tracy joined him for an exclusive conversation. But then Lamar stood 10 toes down during his press conference earlier this afternoon and straight up said he did not have any conversation, no interaction with Daniel Faalele in game. He said he didn't know where that report came from. He didn't speak with Daniel, and Daniel didn't speak with him. Said neither of them were involved in any heated conversation. What's my take on this? I think he has moved on. I think he is solely focused on getting his body right, his mental right, and ultimately the game plan right for a gotta-have-it game in Cincinnati with postseason contention very much on the line on 1 o'clock Sunday. Like, that's to me what this is about. Unless Tracy Wolfson has more clarifying and cleaning up to do, she apologized for perhaps the report being misconstrued, but certainly didn't go back and fact check herself or clear up a report. And I don't believe a veteran reporter like herself would just make that up in game and interrupt the broadcast between Jim and Tony to share something completely made up, fabricated. So this to me is simply put, Lamar's on to week 15. As Bill Belichick would say, we're on to Cincinnati. And if that's the case, great news that he was seen at practice, as he has been every other week throughout this 5-week stretch after missing a day. This footage courtesy of Jamison Hensley of ESPN. Not a whole lot to see here other than a light jog onto the field. Cold up there, isn't it? Especially for a Florida boy, which is why he's bundled up. But again, there he is. He missed Wednesday's practice. You probably have heard that by now. With an NIR designation, that's non-injury related, for rest. It's something that John Harbaugh spoke about when asked on Monday during his press conference, related to what's become somewhat of a trend. One missed practice all the way back to Vikings week. The difference, all of those leading up to this week were physical ailment related. This week it was a rest day, which Lamar himself says is important for the maintenance, is important for the recovery part of where he's at right now, going into this AFC North clash in Cincinnati. Harbaugh from earlier in the week.
You want to have everybody practicing every day. I mean, it's your goal, as a coach. But it's a long season, man. I mean, these guys go through a lot. You know, Lamar, much as anybody, he's got the ball in his hand every play. He's making plays. He's doing what he does. He's competing like crazy. You know, so there's going to be times where he's just not going to be up for practice. It's just not going to be the best way to go about doing it. And that's a conversation between, you know, Lamar, the trainers. You know, we're involved in that to some degree. But, you know, what's best for him to be ready to play is best on Sunday. That's really what matters. And so, sure, you'd rather have everybody practicing all the time. But if it's not the best thing to practice because you want to get your body right, that's definitely got to, you know, I think you have to respect that as a coach. I know you have to respect that as a coach. So I respect Lamar and his judgment, and I thought he played very well. You know, I thought he played very well in the game.
I thought he played very well in the second half when they were clawing back at that deficit that they had built up by really losing all three phases of the first two quarters against Pittsburgh. Second half was, in a lot of ways, dominated statistically by the Ravens, and ultimately they didn't have a lot to show for it in a loss, as we know, on their home turf. The injury report came out within the last hour or so, as we're live right now. And you can see that indeed Lamar is good to go. He was upgraded to full participant after that DNP rest. And it's not even a DNP. There's just two hyphens there as if to suggest, or excuse me, there was a DNP. But it was non-injury related for rest on Wednesday. Couple new names now grace this list. Mark Andrews with the glute. He was limited. Cheeto Awuzie, not a new name. He was on there Wednesday, but he was upgraded to full participation, which is fantastic. It's been a key part of this Ravens secondary in year one with them, and I think certainly a candidate to be extended. He's been dealing with a shoulder, but he was upgraded to full. Rashad Bateman upgraded to limited with an ankle. And when I say upgraded, he popped up as a new name on this list. So Mark Andrews and Bateman both were limited with respective injuries. Glute for Mark, ankle for Rashad. No surprise there for Bateman, who obviously is dealing with the aftermath of a high ankle sprain that caused him to be sidelined for a couple games. Keaton Mitchell with that knee was upgraded to a full participant. Tavius Robinson was as well. Perhaps he's going to be good to go and play. He certainly seems like a player that wants to play based on some of his media scrum interviews. Ardarius Washington, full participant, perhaps set to make his 2025 debut at some point. He's in the middle of his 3-week window since being active. He has not yet been activated, but his 3-week practice window opened 2 weeks ago now. And Nate Wiggins was upgraded to full participation after being limited with that foot, which forced him out of the second half Thanksgiving night against Cincinnati. Somehow came back and played a lot in that Ravens-Steelers game. You got to tip your cap to him. That dude is a warrior, and they're going to need him. And most importantly, they're going to need this offense over this closing stretch to start returning to form. It's been a group that has looked unrecognizable for over a month now. They've had flashes, no question. They've had good halves. They've had good moments. They've had good quarters. But overall, this is a group that is struggling to cash in the red zone, has all year long. They're the 30th ranked red zone offense. 44.9% of the time, they're scoring touchdowns. It's not good enough. They're 13th in scoring in terms of points per game at 23.9. They're 16th on fourth down, 56.5% of the time they're converting. They're 21st on third down, 37.7% of the time they're moving the chains. The passing offense has been woeful, 27th overall in that category with 182.2 yards per game. Rushing, you know the Ravens are always going to be top 5, top 10. That's exactly where they are right now. Top 3 at 142.9 rushing yards per game. But when you look at the quarterback, while he is far from, and I will continue to say this, and I want to be clear, and please don't take my words out of context. He's far from the biggest, most significant issue with this team right now, but it doesn't mean he hasn't been an issue, as this chart suggests. Take a look at the EPA per dropback. This is a true media study. And we're looking at obvious passing situations, the minimum threshold being 250 dropbacks. Lamar finds himself in the bottom corridor here, second to worst. Only above Cam Ward, the rookie, number 1 overall pick back in April, who went to the Tennessee Titans. So in obvious passing situations, in the drop back game, Ravens haven't been good enough. And it starts, of course, up front with their personnel, particularly with their guard play. We know absolutely it has a lot to do there. Lamar's physical setbacks have something to do with this. Todd Monken has something to do with this. Drops have had something to do with this, no question. The egregious one was on Bateman on 3rd down, which could have changed the course of that game on Sunday against the Steelers. No doubt about it. He had one player in front of him to make miss and a whole lot of daylight after that. Lamar's game looks a lot different. There's been other end zone drops as well. Mark Andrews within the last couple weeks, and we could sit here all day long and find more areas for context on what hasn't been good enough and why it hasn't been good enough. But we can't ignore that when Lamar does miss these practices now for 5 weeks running, 1 a week, yes, in past weeks, we know that he's still put forth a winning formula at times in these games after missing said practice. It's never been plural so far throughout those 5 weeks, so I'll keep it at singular. It's been 1 practice per week since the Vikings week, right? But that doesn't just affect him. It affects the entire operation. Listen to Todd Monken.
Maybe you're not getting quite as many reps with your entire operation in practice.
I think anytime a player, especially your quarterback, is not able to practice, you're talking not only the mental side of it, but the timing with your receivers, and then the physical part of it. There are some challenges with that. There just is. It's not just Lamar. It's any player that misses time. And you got to find a way to overcome that because nobody cares. And we can't care. And when we take the field, we need the product to look like we want it to look like. And we need to score points. And we were darn close. And I know close doesn't count, but get the touchdown at the end, you're at 28, almost 30 points, you're feeling good. Hey, here's where we're at. Still not where we want to be in the red zone. But I'm not deterred. I'm fired up. We get another opportunity this week against the Bengals. And when we haven't turned it over, we've at least given ourselves a chance in every game.
Cannot turn the ball over against divisional foes. Certainly can't do it 5 times. And typically with how closely contested Steelers-Ravens rivalries are, you can't turn the ball over at all. Ravens lost the turnover battle on Thanksgiving night against Cincinnati. They lost the turnover battle on Sunday. Were there other areas that they absolutely could have won that game in? For sure. But it starts in a lot of ways and ends with ball security in these types of games. I know that the messenger here, as I mentioned earlier on in the stream, isn't the best ever given some freezing cold takes that he's had earlier on in his TV career. It's a former NFL head coach, Eric Mangini, who I'm referring to here. I would like you to try your best to separate those past comments and focus on the message rather than the messenger in this clip that I'm about to play. Because what I really want to focus in on is when these missed practices start to tally up, first and foremost, it's tough on Lamar himself, right? And hey, he says he needs these days. And so you have to give the player, as John Harbaugh said earlier this week, you have to give the player the benefit of doubt and respect his judgment, right? But it does affect the operation. And if we're not going to acknowledge that, then I think that's naive of us. Listen to Eric Mangini, who, yes, did not do it successfully, but has been a part of it and has run a pro operation before during his time in New York. So that's the current situation. It's an interesting perspective. It's food for thought in terms of how that affects not only himself and his preparation on Sundays, but the entire operation. Now, to be clear, a lot of this is stemming from the Wednesday DNP, NIR, non-injury related for rest. As I've mentioned many times throughout the stream, Lamar did play today. He was upgraded, and when I say play, he did practice today. He was a full participant, as you see here, on the second of 3 injury reports. So it's really, in a sense, it's no different than any other week, aside from the fact that This week, according to the injury report, the way the team is communicating this, right? The only difference is that it's not a physical setback according to the report this week versus the previous 5 weeks dating back to the Vikings week. There was, let's call it a knee or an ankle or a toe or a hamstring. And so just so we kind of connect all of this together, that's where things are. That's where the Ravens stand. And in terms of Lamar, he's fighting that uphill battle, man. I don't know if a level of confidence is a missing link right now. Perhaps there's a distrust with his offensive line, given the issues that they've had in pass protection, given the fact that he's already been sacked. I have the number right in front of me. Lamar's been sacked 29 times already this year with another month to go. He's already thrown 5 interceptions. He threw just 4 last year. We know that, look, I think there was always going to be a level of regression from a historic season that was going to be really hard to repeat. 41 total touchdowns to 4 interceptions. That is absurd. And obviously MVP-like, which is yet another reason as to why we all know it was a total hose job last year when it came to that voting process. But when I say that Lamar has regressed from last year, I don't want you to take that and run and be like, Bobby's a hater or Bobby's looking for reasons to kick Lamar when he's down. That's just simple stuff. And a lot of it has to do with the physical setback. Setbacks, plural. I mean, does it hit different when Eric Weddle says it? Because he talked to Femi and I on Tuesday night in the collective about it.
He had taken that next step of really killing people with his mind and his arm.
Did I say Femi? Femi's on my mind. Jeff and I on the collective, of course.
And not relying so much with his legs. And I felt like that was really the next step in his progression of being that year in and year out. And then this year, I think like he's regressed a little bit from, I coach the quarterbacks. So I study a lot of quarterbacks, and I'm not saying I'm a quarterback guru. Like, I'm not saying that, but there are some fundamental things that I see that I watch them that just aren't in line with consistent quarterback play. And it can easily be fixed. And it's mostly like footwork and just eyes and fundamentals of just everything in sync as a quarterback needs to be on par when you're making throws and you're being consistent and getting completions. Like, completions are everything for a quarterback. And I try to say that to Gage as he's playing quarterback and just trying to, reiterate those fundamental type things. And so I just think like it's just a little bit off with his footwork. And when he backtracks into the pocket at times, trying to escape, where if he climbed the pocket and just stay where you are and get the ball out. But those things that he's done, and he's done it at a high level, and he's done it better than anybody. So I know like he can. I just think like, just as the team, like something's a little off, and he can easily correct those things and get us back to playing at a high level and winning games.
I highly encourage you guys to go check out that full conversation from Tuesday on the collective with Eric Weddle. And I get it. The regression word tends to take on a life of its own. There's a certain connotation that comes with it that is probably a little bit more lofty or weighty than it needs to be. But I think when you look at it by definition and you look at what Lamar did last year, inevitably, in a sense, there was going to be a level of regression because last year was historic. Last year was transcendent. Last year was generational. I say that with the utmost respect of what he was able to accomplish. And the umbrella over all of that is that Lamar's not healthy, period. To end this on a positive note, and to those of you that are in the waiting room, I'm sorry, I'm up against it. I got to get over to Tampa for the Buccaneers game. I'll get you guys back tomorrow. The waiting room's cooking right now because of the word regression, I think. To end this on a positive note, I think there are a couple different things that you can really hang your hat on right now if you're still in it and if they haven't hurt you enough or too much. Because Shannon said that, right? Unk said that on the nightcap the other night. He said, I'm hurt. The Ravens have hurt him. And maybe you guys are in that category. But if you have, by the grace of God, any more resilience left in you, I'm going to tell you why. Because at any given time, as we've seen some of the mobility start to spike in the last couple of games, and as this new, fresh 4-week stretch begins against really difficult opponents, 2 of which are AFC North teams, two of which still have a legitimate chance to be the number one seeds in their respective conferences at any given time. Superman Lamar could start to don the cape again. And when you add that into the fact that the AFC is wide open and there are no super teams in the National Football League right now, I think those are two areas for positivity. Another one in terms of looking at this logically is that there are a bunch of different ways that the Ravens can still win the AFC North, and you see them listed out right here. Obviously, number one, controlling their own destiny, even though it feels a lot different than it did a week ago in that category, because here's the difference between controlling your own destiny this time last week and today. Last week, if you win against the Steelers, then you have a certain you don't have a razor thin margin for error in the closing 4 weeks. This week, sure, you still control your own destiny, but you have to win out. So there's a difference there in destiny levels, if you will. But I want to focus in on number 2 and 3, because those are the areas I think all 6 of these are realistic. They should be ranked, though, in different levels of reality. But winning out is 1. 2 is beating the Bengals and Steelers, and 1 of the Packers or Patriots, meaning you're 3-1 down this closing 4-week stretch. And on top of that, you need Pittsburgh to lose 1 of their 3 other remaining games. And the Steelers are no slouch of a schedule down the stretch here. Detroit, Cleveland, Miami. And then, of course, the regular season finale in Pittsburgh against the Ravens. Scenario number 3, beat the Bengals and Steelers, lose to the Packers and the Patriots, and then have Pittsburgh lose 2 of those 3 other remaining games that I just ripped off. 4, 5, and 6, tall tasks. Tall tasks for my money. So that's where we're at. And that's where I'll finish this segment.